Hello and welcome to another mHUB Inside. Today we have our 3D Printing Essentials Toolkit. So, we're going to be covering the 3D printing tools you will need to work on your basic FDM style machines. So, today we're going to be looking at some of the tools for this Ender, but many of these tools are applicable for all sorts of different FDM 3D printers. So, starting off here, we're going to be wanting to have a nice little scraper. We can use this scraper to remove prints from the build platform once they are done. So you would just simply take your scraper and pop off your prints. In this case, we have a little upgrade to this printer. This is a spring steel build plate that allows us to pop the prints off a lot more easily. So instead of having to do a lot of scraping, you can just kind of pop it. It makes your life easier most of the time. Alright, now some notes on the scraper. It is probably the most dangerous tool to use when you are 3D printing. It is really easy to, improperly place your hand while scraping and stab yourself with it. So you don't want to do that. So watch where your hands are when you're using this, or if you're using a razor blade or whatever to scrape parts off. Just be smart with these things. Alright, so next up, we have a pair of cutters. These cutters can be used to snip the end of your filament before you start printing. So here we have some filament. This is just PLA filament. Now what you'd want to use these for is you can use them to cut the end of your filament at a slight angle so that it's easier to feed into your printer and it won't get jammed when you're trying to set up your printer. On that note, you'll definitely need some filament. So this filament here is standard PLA filament. There's a ton of different brands out there. You can purchase them online or you can buy them at most micro centers. In this case, like I said, PLA is probably the most common 3D printing material because it is very easy to print with. It is also biodegradable, which is nice. And it prints at a very low temperature, so it'll print on just about anything. Something to note about this filament is you want to make sure when you store it, you actually store the filament by pulling it through one of these little holes here. If you just let this wrap around the spool, it can get caught and wrapped underneath itself, and then when you're printing, it will get all jammed up and tie a knot, and your print will fail while you are not there, and you will be very sad about it. So when you're done, before you just let this go back onto the spool, go ahead and throw it through one of those little holes, or if there's a little clip. Most spools have some kind of way of holding on to the filament. If they don't, just use some tape. That works too. That up there. Next up, we have a set of Needlenose Pliers. These are great for removing support from prints. So sometimes you print things that do not completely support themselves, so you'll need to have some structures that will help support them. In this case, we have a round object, and under here it would not have supported itself very well, so this support was printed. That's generated by your slicer program. But anyways, what you can use these for is ripping that support off more easily. Just pop it off like that. Otherwise, you'll be trying to scrape it with your fingers. Be careful if you are removing support with your hand again. This part can be pretty sharp. If you slip, it's really easy to scrape yourself on some of that broken filament and give yourself a nasty cut, and that's not that fun. Another nice thing, though, some of these have the little wire cutters on them, which you can use to replace these, basically, if you're cutting your filament. So, nice to have. Next up, we have some nicer Allen wrenches. Most of these printers do come with some Allen wrenches, but it's a good idea to have a better set, especially some with these little ball ends on them. That'll make it easier to reach some of those kind of awkward fasteners on these machines. If you are using the Creality machines, they're pretty much all metric, so you don't need to worry about having Imperial Allen wrenches. But it's never a bad idea to have an extra set of Imperial Allen wrenches around because you never know where you lose them. So, nice to have. Next up, and also, like I said, these are useful for just doing general repair or maintenance on them, and you'll of course need some to build the machine. Next up, we have some repair items. So in this case, we have an extra nozzle here and a little wrench to remove that nozzle. You want to make sure you have a tool like this to remove the nozzle. and you're not trying to grab it with your hands, because a lot of times you'll have to heat the nozzle up in order to remove it. So you don't want to touch it with your fingers. Those nozzles can wear out over time if you're running abrasive filaments, like wood-filled filaments, or they can just get clogged if you leave the machine hot for way too long. So then, you'll have to get the filament out of there. Sometimes you can salvage this with an acupuncture needle that's less than 0.4 millimeters, and you can actually push the whatever crap is cut up in there out of there. But a lot of times, just easier to replace the nozzle. These things are like less than $1 a piece, at least for this printer. Some printers, the nozzles can get pretty expensive, so maybe worth it to repair those ones. I end up just replacing these most of the time anyway. The last thing you'll need really is just going to be a computer and a file. So, computer here, and you can either make your own CAD files using CAD software, or you can download them from places like GrabCAD or Thingiverse and print those files. Software will be a whole nother thing, but there's plenty of different options out there, and there's a lot to learn about all the different softwares and different tools you can use for actually working with those files. But that pretty much concludes the basic toolkit for this machine here. And like I said, most other generic FDM machines. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions about 3D printing, go ahead and leave them in the comments. We would love to get back to you on those. And if there's any more information you're looking for, let us know. Thanks again. Take care.